What do you do if you suspect your boss may have ADHD and you have ADHD? How do you manage up? Do you need to manage up? Hi, I'm Brett, the Audi Boss, and on this channel we talk about ADHD and autism in the corporate workplace. I'm Brett, I have a formal diagnosis of ADHD and autism, and I've been in leadership for over 10 years, and I also have over 10 years of leadership training. In today's video, I'm talking to one of my dearest and absolute best friends in the entire world, Sherry, who used to work for me, and it's because of our working relationship that we became such good friends. And she no longer reports to me. We haven't worked together for a few years now. But one of the things that I thought would be a good conversation was for us to both talk about how when I discovered my ADHD and eventually my autism and how I brought that to work. And then one of the things that we connected over was that she also has ADHD, but the timing and the discovery for the two of us with our ADHD in separate times and in very separate ways. So I thought it'd be interesting to sort of get her perspective on when you sort of had somebody who didn't know they had ADHD as a manager, and then that discovery, and then how things shifted on the other side of learning about having that ADHD and how did that change things for us. We're going to have that conversation today about how to be both neurodivergent leaders. Sherry was also a leader in her role as well. Here is that conversation. This is a little bit of a longer one to talk about ADHD and a manager-employee relationship when you both have ADHD and or autism. And we're going to start with how Sherry learned about her ADHD diagnosis. You at least had more awareness of it than I did.
You know, it's funny you say that. I was diagnosed when I was in my early 20s. That's literally all I got, though. It was like, well, you have this thing. And it was pretty new at the time to diagnose an adult. It was still very much a kid's thing. So I feel like everything was focused on helping children. So here I am as an adult out of college. I got this diagnosis and that was it. So I would say that even when I met you, I still kind of thought I was the only one who had it.
Oh, wow.
I really didn't have this sense of other adults having it and struggling with it because just they weren't talking about it then, and I certainly wasn't talking about it. So I was still seeing it just very much as a personal deficiency and not what we now know it to be.
Because there were no tools.
No, none. When I first started working with you, I was a little, I hadn't had, my relationship with bosses prior to that had been very inconsistent, we'll say. So I wasn't really, I didn't really know what to expect. And I found that once we started working together and got to know each other, I found it to be pretty easy. And I now know, well, we just were matching energy, matching chaotic energy. So whether or not it was a healthy relationship is maybe to be discussed, but I know that we just kind of fell into place easily with each other. I felt like there were things that, you didn't get all up in arms about things that I did or didn't do like other people would.
I got a really in-depth question the other day about how other people react to me, like as an autistic ADHD manager. Do I have people, especially people on my team, treat me differently because of it? Well, I didn't know when we first met. I didn't know until 7 or 8 years into our partnership. Because it was around, it was the pandemic that I started to pull on that thread.
Wow.
And, it was with TikTok and everything, with people talking about their symptoms more, that's when I was like, oh, hey. And I started to tell you about it because I was just like, hey, this is feeling like something. And you were like, yeah. Well, the work that we were doing at that time, ADHD was driving like the big vision. Like I have this big, bold idea, and these are all the different sub ideas, possibly too many ideas. And I think that's sort of where it's sort of like, where I reflect on being kind of a manager, I still get into trouble with this, is as soon as I've got an idea, obviously I'm excited about the idea and I want the whole team to work on that idea, be damned anything else that we were just working on from the last idea. And I think that can be wildly disruptive. And we had a colleague who gently would very respectfully, but very gently call me out on that. And I now know, on this end of it, on this end of the diagnosis, oh, that's what I was doing. That's really disruptive. Like that can really mess up a whole team because like you're changing priorities, you're adding to the workload, you're doing all this stuff. But like if there's a lot of enthusiasm and constantly changing priorities. So how did you how did you manage up with my rather stereotypical ADHD bouncing off the walls with new ideas.
Did I? Did I though? And thinking back, I'm like, I think I might have been on the back of that bike.
Yeah.
Just like wee, because I could keep up, and we kept up with each other's, I don't know what you want to call it,
Energy.
frantic enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And chaotic enthusiasm. You say these things and it seems like such a long time ago in a lot of ways, and it's hard for me to see past what I've seen as could be masking, could be growth. I've seen you go kind of really become someone who leans on the systems, which moving into this more rigid corporate space provides some pretty solid frameworks.
Yeah.
Which can feel oppressive, but also we're, hey, this is step one, this is step two, this is how we're supposed to evaluate the priorities, and being forced to be accountable to those systems we were presented with. I think, as frustrating as they can be for people like us, they're also a bit of a safety net in some weird way, in that, well, I have to prioritize based on what I've been told to prioritize because of these things. So, but as I think we both grew over time, because we were both exposed to these systems around the same time, and I think both of us sort of latched onto them a little bit.
Yeah.
In some ways, and it's like, well, here's a chart.
Yeah.
Here's a chart, and it's annoying, but we get to fill it out. And when we fill out the chart, we have these things. So we have these built-in now guideposts and checks and balances that we're expected to be accountable for later. So as many issues and difficulties as they presented to us in our brains also provided these opportunities for us to learn how to use systems to help us.
I think that's where we had some angst too, which is also that very classic ADHD thing, which was we really resented having to have a system at the beginning of it. And then that's where I think we sort of let ADHD kind of like, what if we hack the system and make it our own?
Yes.
Because there was still systems that, you're right, as a corporate structure where we worked, we had to do their systems their way, which when a system takes over can be very frustrating when you're trying to stay creative. But we had enough autonomy that we could say, well, now hold on, no, let's make our own system that mirrors that system and works within that system so that it works for our needs. And I think that was kind of one of the, I don't think I could have done that without you, because then you were able to sort of sit down and go, okay, here's what this should look like. And then I think where I needed you especially was, I can't do stuff like that. Like I can sit down with you and I can verbalize in verbal processing style the crazy ideas of how I want to do it, and I can like see it in my head. But like I can't possibly sit down and like develop a spreadsheet for it.
Well, yeah, I think that's why we're a good two-headed monster, because my auditory, I have a lot of trouble if I only hear something, it's really hard for me to retain it.
Yeah.
And I have to see it. I have to make it. I have to see it physically, digitally. I need to see something.
Yeah.
So I think that, the strengths where you have of picking up on things you're hearing and being able to paint a picture in your head, I really can't do that. But I can then I think between the two of us, we can make a pretty good loop of information.
Yeah.
Because you can articulate it and I can make it visually, evidenced.
When you and I first started, it was just the two of us. And then as we started to build out the team that we created based on the work that we were doing, we almost instinctively, I don't think we realized it at the time, but we were instinctively going, okay, what are the needs that we need to have met for the work that we're doing? But then what are the needs that the two of us, thinking style wise, really need, like the piece that's going to complete our puzzle for the work that we're trying to do. And so we took a long time before we hired the first person to work with us to sit down and go, okay, well, I work like this and you work like this, and here's how we do this together. We need somebody who can kind of fit into that. And then we started to work backwards from there, just like build the job requirements.
Yes.
And then we kind of hired for someone who had the skills to sort of pick up on the gaps that we both had. And I think that was critically important to how, and then we did that over and over and over and over again as we built our team. Like we ended up hiring out like, I don't know, 10, 12 people by the time we were done. But like, it was like, we just rinse repeat, did that every single time.
To be in a space where I felt comfortable saying, you know what, this thing, not my strong suit. So I'd love to bring on someone for that is a strong suit for. So, and feeling confidently vulnerable, I think is a really good practice to be able to do in a professional setting, and not often something people think about doing. But I feel like that, I think our team is pretty awesome. And I think that they do fill in a lot of the gaps.
I like that phrase, confidently vulnerable, because it's like we both kind of leaned into that a lot, because it was like, look, I'm going to tell you what my weaknesses are because I see it in you as a strength. And I can't do this without you. We can only do this together. And I need to tell you that, because otherwise we're not going to be successful at this.
Powerful to do. And I think it also helps, your relationship with that person, to say, this is kind of an expectation I have in our relationship working together. So I think that helps people feel even confident in their specialties and their abilities to have their manager say, this is a reason I stand out on this team and why I was brought in, and they can kind of own that piece.
But to be able to look at somebody and go, hey, you're really good at this. You have a really, like, I'm in awe that you can do this. Not just because I'm incredibly incompetent at that, but like, you're just really good at that. Like, do you want to do, and I think that's like, I love these types of questions. Like, is that something you want to keep doing more of?
Right.
Do you like doing that thing? Or what can sometimes happen in a corporate workplace structure is now you're getting tapped to do that thing too much. Are you sick of it? And a question that I use in coaching is there another job that you see somebody else doing that you're a little envious of, that you think you could do better? And that's where I try to sniff out from somebody, what are you interested in? Like, because I want people to bring their interest to work for this to work, because I want it to be both strength-based and interest-based.
When we started working together and how I, worked with you as my manager, you and I kind of worked together. You started learning about ADHD. As a result, I started learning more about ADHD. And I think we kind of like, you slingshotted me up to where I could realize we both had this thing. Because we're both different, we don't struggle with the same things. I knew how I could better help you.
Yeah.
And in turn, would usually help myself.
We had built so much of that trust up over the years that when I was able to be like, hey, I think I got this thing, and you were able to go, oh yeah, let's keep going down that road and see where that takes us. And luckily we had one or two other colleagues on the team who also had already identified as having ADHD as well, and they were comfortable talking about it too. And so it kind of felt some days like you and I were going to school with that other colleague, or who had a little bit more awareness, because again, at that time there wasn't as many resources available.
And I learned what was helpful to you, again, because it's not a monolith, of course. It's really learning where can I really help you with when I need to bring something to you.
Because normally as employees, our first place is going, okay, I need an accommodation for me. But if I think my boss or my manager, somebody is either undiagnosed or diagnosed and they don't want to talk about it, which is entirely possible, how can I manage up by offering up accommodations to them? And some people might think, oh, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to offer up an accommodation to a manager when you're an employee. But if you want to get things done and you're struggling with priorities, and you're struggling with the to-do list, and you're struggling with all the different things, thinking about how and how you phrase that, I think, is critically important too. Like, it could be as simple of like going to like, and you and others on the team had done this for me plenty of times, which is just coming to me and sitting me down in our check-ins and saying, help me prioritize. Like, there's a lot of things here you want to get done. There's a lot of ideas here. How would you like me to prioritize these tasks and help me figure out due dates? Like, again, it's like a reverse accommodation. Like, you're sort of asking for an accommodation for your work at the same time as you're sort of like suggesting here's an accommodation that they can do as well.
Mm-hmm. If you are neurotypical and you have a boss that you're thinking, I think they have ADHD, what are some of the things that might make you think they have ADHD?
Yeah.
And one would be they've given you 57 things to do, but no sense of which one is most important.
Yeah.
And, knowing when it's due doesn't necessarily tell you if it's most important, right? It's,
Yeah.
and as a good employee, you should be saying, hey, you've given me a lot of things. I see a lot of due dates, but I need to understand what are the biggest priorities here.
Yeah.
And, and again, if you're in a situation where you're in a company that has the systems of OKRs, what are they? Objectives and key results.
Objectives
right?
and key results, or KPIs, key performance indicators.
So you've got these guiding forces sometimes of, well, these things actually directly align with our department goals, our company goals, whatever those might be.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a situation where you are in maybe a smaller company that doesn't have those, it may need to be more time bound, more, specific to the calendar or the importance of a client that you're working with, or the amount of money coming in based on whether or not you get it done. So I think, sitting with them to even week by week. And I think that's that asterisk there about the check-in. But I think if you or your manager has ADHD, a frequent check-in is
critical.
So important.
Critical.
I know other people who love that they only meet with their manager once a month. Oh my gosh, the mess I could get into if I didn't check in once a month.
Well, that's just it. If you and I didn't meet in every week, barring vacations or sick days or time off, we were a mess.
Yeah, it was really hard because you want to do all the things.
Yeah.
And, you've got the things you want to do, and then the things you don't want to do, and the things are important. And so I think just, if you're neurodivergent, if your boss is neurodivergent, a weekly check-in is, you've got to do it. You have to.
Yeah. And it doesn't it doesn't have to be a full hour if schedules are tough, but you should try to go into it with a few small specific structures within the check-in if you can.
Mm-hmm.
One of them being, what are our priorities this week? What are the deadlines for this week? And then if there are competing priorities, how are we prioritizing each one of those things? With my bosses, I would sit down and I would keep like a little to-do list, a separate notebook, that as things would occur to me throughout the week, I would just write this list down of things I want to talk to my boss about. And I would just keep like a little, it's literally just a little sticky note with like bullet lists on it. And then I recommend ranking them in prioritization as well, so that if you run out of time on any of those topics, don't put your most important topic at the bottom.
Right.
And then give yourself time to come out of that check-in with, all right, well, I need to check in what the priorities are. So if it's only a 30-minute call, you got to have some time awareness. All right, there's 15 minutes left in the call. There's 10 minutes left in the call. Pause and like, what are my priorities for this week? Or compare. These are what I'm prioritizing. Is that what you want me to prioritize this week?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to approach it, because like you said, it does force you to align yourself, which, neurodivergent or not, it's really good to do once a week, just because things change throughout the week. Things come in, things go out, things do change based on all sorts of different factors. So to be able to respond to them meaningfully, it's helpful to have that reset once a week and know that you're working on the most important thing. And if your manager is neurodivergent, I think sometimes, well, we all forget other people don't live in our head, and we're getting all this information that tells us, things have shifted, but you need to make sure you've communicated that to other people, because they might not know.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves. Not necessarily at work, because it feels in personal life versus work life. Like in personal life, I feel like it's harder for me to tell a friend or a loved one, hey, I don't live in your head. I don't know what you're talking about right now. Versus like at work, I can be like, hey, could you give me some more context around your thinking on that?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like there's a professional way to say it where you can kind of find a respectful way in. Whereas in your personal life, it sounds so corporate when you say that to somebody, but like, I just want to shout to somebody like, what is going on?
Yeah. Well, that can still happen as much as we communicate, and there's all these ways we hear about things, especially with the remote life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't hear things. We don't
Yeah.
have that
You're more
casual.
siloed.
Yeah, that casual, the bathroom conversations don't happen, or at least
Yeah.
they hopefully don't if you're fully remote. I'm not going to
Yeah, I
say
mean,
they don't, I'm
that's
guessing,
more
but
of a lawsuit for a company if they are. So,
I mean, things happen. But
yeah.
yeah, so I think, if your manager has a billion priorities, corralling them once a week, or they should be corralling you too, and getting aligned on the priorities helps with that big long list, right?
Yeah.
One thing I think about a lot that you said was just over communicate. There's a lot of times there's a lot of factors in it. And,
Yeah.
if you can't get with them in a room to talk about it, frankly, over communicating is best, because nowadays, if you've written all of this in an email, your boss doesn't have to read the whole email.
Yeah.
You can say, here's some key points. I'm going to include other context here for you to refer to if you need it.
Yeah.
But, just and kind of guiding them through your over communication a little bit is something I found helpful, because I know I would loop you in on things and just say, I want you to have the full picture, because I know I'm dealing with this thing. And as my manager, you should know about it, but you may not need the minutia. So
Yeah.
I'm going to stick it in here.
Here's the context I think you need for what you have to do.
But you might not. So tuck it away, but you can always go back to
Yeah.
that email so again, in trying to be respectful about what you are communicating, you can get to overload, you can get to overwhelm.
Yeah.
And I think just a little bit of guidance in the email of, here's key thing, refer to, read the bottom. In case of emergency, break glass and read the bottom of this email if you have to go back and you're in conversation with your manager and need to figure out what the heck I'm talking about. So I thought that was helpful.
I would add to that too, don't wait too long.
Yes.
Because like if something's building, like there's and this happens with, I find, new managers, where new managers on the team will wait too long to speak up about something, because they're trying, to their management skills and to their respect, they're trying to manage it and show that they can manage it.
Yeah.
Which is commendable and great for your experience building and everything. But a part of being a good manager is knowing to raise your hand and go, hold up, I need more help on this. It's not necessarily that every manager is expected to do it completely on their own. It's that a manager is supposed to know how to pull in the resources that they need to get the thing done to remove a barrier. So if that means to pull in more people to be more effective, or to bring another manager in at a certain time to help, that's where you have to have that awareness to be like, hold on, this is going to get out of control. And because I've had people come to me and I'll have to say, boy, if you just brought me in 2 instances before where it is now, we could have shut this whole thing down and saved everybody a lot of stress. Because it could be you may not have context that more senior manager has. There's a system, as we noted, that could help support this. Or, oh, I know somebody else in the organization who can fix that. Things like that. It's not necessarily about, I think sometimes we internalize that work, maybe because of rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and we're getting nervous. Oh, I don't want to be judged. Oh, I don't want to be seen as screwing this up. Or, oh, I want to be shown that I'm capable, or I'm trying hard enough, for all these different things. It's just like, yeah, but you got to know when to ask for help.
Yes. And I think that, that's again if you have ADHD, your boss has ADHD, your boss you want your boss to be able to advocate for you and have the information, arm them with that information and the ability to find it so that they can do that easily. If they have to chase you down to figure something out, that's a frustrating thing. So I think, in terms of, having a manager who's neurodivergent, if you can just be as transparent as possible where you keep things, where you track things. I mean, I know I tend to want to hide my work a lot until it's done, but it's like you said, it is, if you give them access and they can check things quickly, it keeps it, you can often help keep things from spiraling further than they need to, because they, your boss can say, oh, there's that spreadsheet where they keep everything. I can find that. I can go there.
I know there were days where I would have overwhelm, either when you were giving me context around a situation, or it was just things weren't going our way because there was just too many barriers or whatever, or maybe I was having a hard time articulating my vision or what I wanted or what the thing was. When you are with a manager who, again, you don't know if they are or not with ADHD or autism, and you don't know if they have a diagnosis or not, but maybe you suspect it, maybe you don't, I don't know. But when you've got somebody who's starting to be kind of short, maybe you sense overwhelm coming, but you're starting to recognize it as defensiveness.
Mm.
Because we had a colleague once, and this is like one of the most important things in my career. I will never let this go because it was so helpful and so courageous of this person. We were having a conversation about something, and I was actively getting defensive about whatever that topic was. And I didn't recognize that I was getting defensive. I had no idea I was doing it. But our colleague did. And, there was immense trust between me and this colleague. And the colleague said, "Hey, why are you getting so defensive right now?" And we had the relationship where they could say that to me. And it took me back, and I was just like, I'm not. And then I stopped and I went, I am getting defensive right now. Like it stops me in my shit. Now, I don't recommend everybody do that because, you have to have a really good relationship with your boss to be able to pull that off, which this person had with both of us. And I was able to stop and recognize, I am getting defensive right now. And then I could stop and investigate within myself, what am I getting defensive about? And I use that person's action in that moment all the time, because now I recognize when those are building inside of me, because they so thoughtfully called me on it, that now this was gosh, I don't know, 2019. This was so many years ago now. So now if I start to feel that happening, I have that person's voice in my head and I go, what are you getting so defensive about? And then I stop and reflect. I do like a sensory check. Okay, am I defensive because there's too much information? Am I being overwhelmed? I don't understand what's being talked about. I can't get at my foundation here. Like there's so many different things that I'll run through in my head to be like, what am I getting defensive about? But my question for you is, you're on the other side of that, and maybe you're recognizing somebody's getting defensive. What do you do? Like on your end of it, if you're dealing with maybe me or somebody who's not going to stop and think for half a second about their defensiveness, how do you manage that? Especially when you can tell there's maybe some overwhelm, maybe there's, you don't know what it is.
It's always nice if you can recognize it, that you think, I think this person's actually just got kind of a lot, and I'm the feather on the back right now.
Yeah.
So let me just step away. I feel like you're not in the best place for me to talk about this, and I do need your attention.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go get some water. I've got to go, give them a moment so they can absorb that you're noticing they're overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. You're being respectful of that, and you're walking away for a second, but you do need them. You need them. So, I'm going to come back to you, or, you know what, I'm going to write you an email. Let's talk about it after, So just give, I think just if you have that presence of mind to be able to recognize that and not take it personally, because a lot of us, when people get defensive at us,
that's the thing.
We then get defensive.
We match that energy, especially if we're neurodivergent. There's a strong possibility we're going to match energy for energy. I
don't want any of these things to sound like you're doing your manager's job for them, right? Yeah. There's that boundary of, you want to make sure what you're doing is taking barriers away from them doing what they have to do. They still have to do the thing. They still have to be accountable, but you can move them towards the action that makes them accountable within your role.
Yeah.
By setting up these, I think it's ultimately setting up systems.
Yeah.
But also having the awareness, they may not have ADHD. They may not have autism. They just may have that kind of a personality where you need to just figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
For them and you.
Yeah. And there's always, I always say this for every situation, there's always going to be more context to something that you don't have awareness of, especially as a direct report to a manager, especially the more senior the manager is. Can you track any rigid rules or any rigid thinking? And I think tracking rigid thinking and rigid rules can also be tough, because if it's rigid rules, it's kind of like, well, why do we have to do things that way? Which, if you ask that question to your manager, that is probably going to come back with a defensive response.
Right.
So is there another way we can ask, why are we doing it this way?
Yeah. Well, I think too, people ask that generally. Well, you never know. Generally, it's I want to understand so I could do this better for you.
Yeah.
You know, I want to do what you need me to do. I don't want to waste anyone's time, including my own. So, you know, give me some context as to why we have to do it this way.
Yeah.
What is the benefit of doing it this way? And if you know, your manager can answer that and say, well, it's because that's how our parent corporation told us to do it. Don't really know why. Well, that's frustrating. But if they can say, well, it's because they want us to achieve X. Okay, well, do we have to get there in the way they say, or can we get there a different way? What's a better way to get at it? Yeah, I think if, you know, people just ask that because they want to be a part of the solution. They want to be a useful part of the cog, a useful cog in the machine. So, you know, understanding the bigger picture or specific reason why you're doing something helps them contribute.
Well, and that's our biggest thing. I mean, this is, you know, this is the thing that's not on the reasonable accommodations list that I wish was, but just simply telling an employee the why behind something. Like if you can just explain, why are we doing this, or why are we doing this way? Give me the big picture and then give me the minutia of the details.
One of the biggest things I think you could do to help a neurodivergent boss is when you email them, have a little sheet on the next to your computer, wherever you need to put it, to say, does my email have these 4 pieces of information in it?
Yes.
Background, what you're emailing about. 2, the reason I'm emailing. 3, what the request is, what is the intent of the email I'm sending you. And then 4, if there's something you, the recipient, needs to do, and if there is something you need to do, when you need to do it by. I guess that's 5
take away action and deadline.
Yeah. And the amount of time, and if there's a Zoom link related to the meeting you're talking about, man, I'll throw it in there again.
Yes.
If there's a PDF you're talking about, reattach it.
Yeah.
Because the amount of time your neurodivergent boss will have to, if you don't include those things in email, you're now creating 2 to 3 to maybe 4 more steps for them to do what you need to before they can do what you're asking them to do, if you've remembered to ask them in the email. So I think that you can really, you know, keep in mind with your boss who is neurodivergent, they've got a lot of things competing for their attention. Keep them in that email until they respond to you. Don't make them go chasing things. They'll get distracted.
100%. It is wildly helpful when someone includes, especially if they're following up, but even if it's the first email, includes all the things of all the places and all the locations that I need it right then and there, so I can just grab and go.
Yes.
As opposed to somebody who's like, well, you can find it. And it's just like,
no,
I have 20 seconds to look for this to get you this response. Please, dear God, don't make this an hour for me.
And it helps everybody.
And that's the thing. Ultimately, anytime you do any of this, you're helping everybody. Even if you're managing up, even if you're supporting a manager to try to give them tools and tricks, whether you know they are or aren't, you're still helping other people on the team by doing that. Like you're just being a good colleague, and you're going to get that back. You're going to get that back one way or another. Sherry and I have lots of other topics and conversations. We might be recording more of these conversations. So if there's one topic in particular you'd like for us to talk about, please let us know as well. And be sure to check out some of the other videos while you're here. And please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow and help get more of our educational information out to more people around ADHD and autism in the workplace. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out some of the other videos while you're here.